in color. The continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Ryan O'Neill as Rodney Harrington, Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson, Tim O'Connor as Elliot Carson, Christopher Connolly as Norman Harrington, Patricia Morrow as Rita Harrington, James Douglas as Stephen Cord.
Eddie Jacks has found the means to an end, the end of Martin Peyton's life. He has agreed with Leslie Harrington to try to work through Peyton's chauffeur, Lee Weber. Lee Weber, a man very much in the middle of two opposing forces. On the one side, Eddie Jacks is turning the vice. On the other, his employer, Martin Peyton, who has no knowledge of the plot against his life, has ordered him to learn all he can about Eddie Jacks.
Good morning!
Eddie, don't grin at me this early in the morning. The reflection of your teeth, the glare, it's too much.
Hey, get that junk off the road. What's the matter with you, kid? You got ants in your pants? Yeah. How much you want for it?
Eddie, you couldn't even afford to buy one of the hubcaps.
Don't tell me the old boy is dumb enough to let you drive it home every night.
Are you so hard up for entertainment, all you've got to do is stand around and watch some guy change spark plugs?
How much have you gotten it up to?
35.
35? Oh, what's the matter with 135?
I can't go that fast with old man Peyton in the car.
Oh, he still thinks he's got a horse and buggy, huh?
You know what he tells me, Eddie? He says this machine, it's a precision machine. If it was meant to fly, man, you would have wings on it. 36 is too fast, 34 is too slow. It's got to be 35 on the button or you're dead.
Where do you take him?
What are you doing, some kind of a survey or something?
I've been hooked on these babies ever since I've been in England.
When was that?
During the war?
Which side were you on?
What do you need?
12-incher.
That's nice.
You know, I spend about as much time polishing those tools as I do the chrome on the car.
They drive on the wrong side of the road, you know.
Who?
The English. See, got any more of that?
Inside.
Do you mind? It's a little early for me.
Help yourself.
How about a refill?
It's break time.
Almost all the comforts are home.
Beats the inside of a jail cell, don't it?
Yeah, they told me you put in a little time.
We were talking about you, Eddie.
No, we weren't.
What were you in for?
You got any sugar?
On the table. Come on, Eddie, you can tell me.
Can I?
Well, sure, like you said, I did a small hitch myself.
Well, how come he gave you a job after that?
How come you keep changing the subject?
Because I don't like it.
That makes sense.
You were accused of, helping his granddaughter beat the high cost of living, weren't you?
Peyton never believed that.
Well, believing is one thing. Giving a man a job is something else.
He needed a friend.
So he bought one.
Let me tell you something, Eddie Jacks. He tells me more than he tells his own grandsons.
You remember that guy I told you about?
The one you borrowed the money from?
Yeah, that's the guy. Well, I was in a little bind over some high-flying stock. He bailed me out. He even gave me a job.
Sounds like old man Peyton.
It sure does. But he only did it just so he could get a hold over me. Whenever he was bored, he'd press down on his thumb, and there I'd be. Or he'd dangle one of those ever-loving carrots in front of me. You know the kind, all glazed with brown sugar and smelling of big money. When I'd reach for it, whack, he'd clobber me with his stick. If I didn't smile and say, thank you, sir, please do it again, sir, why, he'd threaten to throw me to the wolves. Well, finally, I just had to lift that money to get out from under.
Peyton won't do that to me. It's going to pay me off someday.
Whack.
No. I've done special jobs for him.
Like what?
You never mind like what. He owes it to me. I deserve it because I'm a lot better than the rest of the bums that he has hanging around that house.
And what if he doesn't?
Well, he won't live long enough to laugh about it.
Hold on now, Matthew. You can't go hightailing out here unless you get your foot in a stirrup somehow or other. After all, you don't want to fall off of old Dobbin, do you? You want to stay... Oh. Is that darn bell out of whack again?
No, I snuck in. This is really something. Is it real?
Sure. It's real 19th century horse.
I should think a 100-year-old horse would be pretty rickety. Don't you like him?
Sure, he likes Dobbin a lot better than he does this old plastic stuff that his parents have been... Look at that. Perfect example of overindulgent parents. The poor kid, he has no taste, no appreciation.
Oh, when he's only a year old.
They're never too young to start learning properly.
You know, I think I'd better go home. You're in sort of a grumpy mood.
No, you're not going home. You're going to come right over here and sit down. Otherwise, I'll tell the cops you snuck in without ringing the bell. Now, here. Check my arithmetic. That'll teach you to call me grumpy.
You know, I'm sorry, but I didn't come over here to have my head chopped off. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask your advice about something.
Advice?
But I don't think I will now.
Go ahead. Talk to this old curmudgeon.
No, I really shouldn't bother you with it.
Maybe it'd be easier if you didn't ask, if I just talked to you. I've already talked to Norman. Your husband and your dad, they're waging kind of a senseless sort of tug-of-war.
What am I going to do about it?
They both know about your heart, but they peck and bicker away like a couple of jaybirds. They're both of age. I'd like to send them to reform school, but you can't.
You know, I like them, and I want them both around.
You've got to choose between them.
Can't.
You've got to.
Nope.
You're just going to let it go along, is that it?
No. I know I have to do something.
I wish I could do it for you, Rita, but I can't.
Hello, Mrs. Harrington. What are you doing here? Spoiling my baby?
No, of course not.
Hello, dear heart. Ah, well, what were you two talking so seriously about?
About her new maternity dress. How do you like it? Kind of form-fitting, ain't it?
Now, you stop embarrassing her, Eli. I was wearing maternity clothes my second month. You're showing a lot more restraint than I.
I'm afraid I'm not showing much of anything.
Now you two are embarrassing me. Get out of here, both of you. You're supposed to be home sleeping, and you've got your bookstore, and I've got my arithmetic. Now, go on, get.
See you for dinner, Eli.
If you're lucky.
Thank you.
Spring. You can't sneak past that bell no matter how skinny you are.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cord said he didn't want to be disturbed this morning.
Oh, these papers are for Mr. Peyton.
Well, can't you leave them with me?
Well, Mr. Peyton asked me to deliver them personally.
Well, then I don't know what to do. Mr. Cord said he didn't want to be disturbed.
Come in, Mrs. Van Lyden.
Thank you, Mr. Cord.
Smile, my love.
What do you have in those papers for Mr. Peyton?
Eavesdropping on your secretary. I thought it was supposed to be the other way around.
Well, that's predictable.
I must be losing my touch.
Hardly.
It's time, my Puritan friend. It's time to be adult to be mature, to be sophisticated, to enjoy life. In short, it's time to live.
Is that your standard little speech?
Those aren't the exact words.
But some variation on the theme.
Usually.
I wish you were 1690 and I can burn you properly in the middle of the square and pray for the devil to release your soul.
Well, since it isn't 1690.
Leave me alone.
You're not working.
I'm brooding.
Oh, darling.
Stop laughing at me.
Oh, William, it's so silly. There's nothing to brood about.
It's all wrong.
Wrong?
I love my wife.
Your ex-wife. It's time you got used to that.
I'll never get used to it.
Despair is rather a sophomoric form of self-pity, Stephen.
Are you all that inhuman? So totally devoid of feeling? Were you born without conscience? Or are you what happens after years of your kind of life? When were you able to say to yourself with conviction, despair is a rather sophomoric expression of self-pity?
Do we have to talk about this?
How old were you? 25? 20? 18?
Please.
How long's it been? How long can a human being survive without feelings? How long can a woman survive?
A long time. But not forever.